granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Hello. When Tony Blair instituted university fees here in Britain in 1998, I got very annoyed. I was furious. I was so angry because I knew it was going to change British society forever. And how it was going to do it was in the following way. Asian girls, Pakistani girls principally, would not go to university. Or if they did go to university, they would be at small local colleges and stay at home. Because paying for a girl's education is not really part of the Pakistani family setup. It's not in the culture. So if they want to put money into education, it will be the boys, and the girls can shift as best they might. And I knew that that was going to restrict the horizons of Asian girls thereafter. I was furious. Although I could see that, though, I didn't see quite how much harm it was going to do. I'll get to that in a minute, but first I'm going to be talking about this. Big landlords cash in on Labour's rent reforms with 40% discounts. That is, auction sales of tenanted properties saw 70% in April as smaller investors race to quit. Now, yesterday I made a video. I'll leave a link in the description. I made a video about the new renting rules that this Labour government have brought in, and I am almost as angry about that as I was about the university tuition fees, because it's going to change British society, and now I'm going to say in ways I cannot even begin to predict. Just like I predicted there would be a change over the university fees, I couldn't see far enough to see exactly how bad it was going to be. The trouble with these sorts of decisions by governments is you don't know, you don't notice what damage they've done, maybe for 20 or 30 years. And this is going to, mind you, this is going to be quicker than the education. All right, so what's happened is that there are these laws which have made it next to impossible for a small private renter to rent a property now without going through all sorts of legal obstacles, and you have to register yourself with the government, and you have to make sure that the property's up to a certain standard, and you have to have inspectors coming round. Let's just look at one small item. Assume that you are going to be given a job, at least temporarily, in another town. So maybe you live in Nottingham and you're going to a place in a job in Manchester for a year or so. What are you going to do with your house? Normally you'd rent it and then you'd rent somewhere else in Manchester. It's not going to be worth the trouble now. You're going to have a house that is going to be really difficult to rent because of the problems the government, there's problems and the stumbling blocks that the government are putting in your way. And at the same time, you're going to have to rent somewhere else in Manchester to take up the job you've been offered. Will you move? No, you'll stay put because you have no choice. Not many people can afford to leave a house standing for a year empty. I mean, it's quite dangerous in Nottingham as well, and renting a flat somewhere else without any other income to balance out the rent. It's going to stymie social mobility. Oh, yeah, there's another thing. You can't be sure of being able to get the renters out when it's your time to come back as well, because the rules about evicting tenants, they've also tightened up to the benefit of the tenants. You know, it's just not going to be worth your while. So what are you going to do? Take the job in Manchester, leave your house empty? No, you're just not going to take the job in Manchester. So it's going to stop social mobility, and it's going to ensure more underemployment in certain areas. Well, in lots of areas, actually. All right, now let's get back to... So that's just one small example of what is going to happen with these new renting laws. Okay, but let's get on with this. So a lot of people are selling up. Professional landlords are snapping up rental properties on the cheap after a knee-jerk reaction to Labour reform. It's not a knee-jerk reaction. It's, well, I suppose if you say a knee-jerk reaction is a reaction for self-preservation, yes, I suppose you could call it that. But when you say somebody has a knee-jerk reaction, you are implying that they're being hypersensitive or something, but they're not. It's very sensible to divest yourself of properties like, small rental concerns. It's sort of interesting that Labour is now the party of mega corporations, isn't it? Because it's just piling in on the small businessman. For instance, did you notice how it piled in to start with on farms? Small family farms were the ones that were going to be devastated by the inheritance taxes. That big corporations, they don't belong to anyone, so there's no inheritance tax. Corporation never dies. So they are actually passing laws that stop small businesses. They did that with farms. I know they've changed it a bit now, but not before there've been some suicides over this. And even so, it's still a fairly difficult problem. I mean, they've moved it from 1 million to 2 million or something like that. Farm equipment is, just hideously expensive. Anyway, right, I got off the subject again, didn't I? So I used to know someone in my hometown, and she bought small properties. She started off with one, then she used that to get a mortgage on another one. She had about 5 or 6 small properties that she rented out, and she had quite a portfolio in a few years. She was a successful businesswoman. She wouldn't do that now, because starting that sort of a business is going to be a terrible problem. I mean, she was in her very early 20s, or maybe even her late teens when she started this enterprise. But now it's just got to be big businesses. The problem is there's nothing coming up from the bottom anymore. People like my friend won't be collecting a portfolio of properties. So there's none of this small stuff. It's just going to be bigger and bigger corporations are buying buildings up. Just a minute, there's a comment here by somebody called David Coughlin at Landlord Sales Agency said more than 50% of their sales in the past few weeks have been to landlords with 10 to 15 properties who were capitalising on the exodus of smaller landlords to expand their portfolios. So you see, they're raking it in now, but after that, there won't be any more coming up. David Coughlin said, they're not massive landlords with 1,000 properties. They're hungry buyers who've been in the market for a while and are set up with limited companies. They're just keen to buy and they're not afraid of the reforms. That's because they have limited companies. Limited companies have employees, heavy employees, if you know what I mean. But the small landlord, the working class, who would, as I say, maybe inherit granny's house or flat, or they're just using that as a way out of being working class. That won't happen anymore. Some of you might remember the television show called Rising Damp. It was about a chap called Rigsby, Mr. Rigsby, who rented rooms in his decaying Victorian house. If you're American, you might not know that comedy show, but you will know Leonard Rossiter. He was the rather oleaginous Russian scientist Smyslov in 2001. When, the American team were on their way to the moon. Now, so anyway, Leonard Rossiter, Mr. Rigsby, would not be able to rent those rooms anymore. He'd have to move out if he wanted to make a living out of his house. He'd have to move out and he'd be selling to more professional outfits. But those little single rooms wouldn't be available anymore. And then the businesses that David Coughlin here was talking about, they'll end up finally selling the portfolio to larger companies, as the owners age and want to retire. And then there'll be nothing left of the small rental market. And we won't see that gap for maybe 10 or 20 years. I don't know, but there will be this process of consolidation going on. And of course, as I said, big companies can bully, cheat and break rules, and you can't do anything about it. A small tenant in the grip of a large company will be in a far worse situation than with most private landlords. And if you think councils are going to compete with such companies, that won't happen either. Councils can't compete either in business nous or simple resources. The sort of people who run for councils are either local party hacks or retired postmen. Now, there was something else here by somebody else said, here we are. Paul Champlina of Legal Specialist Landlord Action said, a landlord panic before the Act's enforcement had shifted the market towards larger investors. That's only going to get worse, of course. He said, there has been an avalanche of landlords selling. If you're geared up and understand regulation, you can scale up. There are institutional landlords piling in, but the days of the part-time amateur landlord are well and truly over. But it was the part-time amateur landlord that was, if you like, the backbone of the small renters. The people who were renting in rising damp. Now, you won't see the worst of it for some years, but it's going to change the character of British society quite profoundly. People are, for instance, going to become more, or get the idea that they have to be more dependent on the state, of getting jobs in large corporations rather than individual enterprise, because as I said, small renting was one of the ways out that you could take if you were enterprising and had a small income. You could, as I say, inheritance or even just mortgaging your own place to buy something else and building up from there. You won't be able to do it. And as I said, you won't even be able to move house or for a temporary job somewhere. Now, I said before about the university fees and Asian girls. Okay, so let me just go through this, because even though I knew there was going to be a problem, I didn't realise how bad that problem was going to be. You see, Asian girls, because they're not being educated at other universities, like, for instance, assume an Asian girl from a Muslim family was going to, had got a place. Let's start again. Maybe they were living in Nottingham and this girl got a place at Manchester University. That wouldn't happen now. They'd say, well, yeah, if you want to get a bit more education, go to Nottingham and live at home. That'll save money. The boys will be put up to move, but not the girls. But it's the girls that get married. So that was 1998. And these girls were kept at home or denied education altogether, maybe. No, we can't afford you going to university. You have to take a job down the local, council offices or something. So these girls would be kept at home and denied education, and then bringing up children without any sort of a wider view of the world. They're stuck in their little enclaves. And this, I think, may be part of the problem we have now with radical Islam. Because, you know, Muslims who were in Britain a couple of generations back, they weren't anything like as religious as the ones now. In fact, you know that Mothin Ali fellow for the Green Party who won a council seat in Hare Hills. I mean, he's wearing the dish dasher and the sort of cap, and he's got this huge beard. If you see the pictures of his parents, and his mother wore a sari, she didn't cover her hair. They were just trying to fit in within their cultural background. But Mothin Ali's a full-scale fanatic by the looks of things. And I'm pretty sure that part of the reason for this second and third generation orthodoxy has to do with the fact that the girls didn't get a chance to get out into the big wide world, and they stayed at home and had babies in a very limited environment. And I didn't see that happening. I just knew that they would be denied education, but I'm quite sure that's part of the problem we have now. So just like I didn't see the radicalisation, even though I could see there were going to be problems, I can't see what sort of problems these rental laws are going to cause. I can see trouble ahead though, and I think that's enough to warn everybody else about the problems that we're going to have. Okay, well, yeah, that's my take on the destruction of the British character and society by this hand grenade of a government. All right, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.